Let's take a look now at Morph UV. Here we have our alien bust on screen. If we step down to our lowest subdivision level and then press Morph UV, it will morph this out flat to the UV layout. Now, if you don't understand UV layout or what that is, we have an entire chapter on UV Master and UVs and ZBrush. In a nutshell, this is a way of unwrapping a three-dimensional object to lay flat so a two-dimensional texture map can be applied to it. And the Morph UV button allows us to quickly check what UVs we have on our character. Now, what's nice about this is it will show us our sculpture in relief based upon the bump slider value here. And we can also paint and sculpt in this Morph UV view, which can be extremely useful. I will step back up to our highest subdivision level, and then once again go to UV Map and Morph UV. And because it's dealing with more subdivisions now, it'll take a little bit longer to flatten. But here we go, and you can see all of our sculpted detail is showing up in relief. Now, if I take the standard brush and let's use alpha 1 and turn on RGB and turn off Z add. We'll select a color here. Let's grab a nice contrasting color like purple. And then let's say I want to paint onto this surface. I can paint right here. I'll turn off lazy mouse with the L hotkey so I can paint a little bit faster. I can paint in this view. So let's say we want to maybe draw some stripes here. If I hold down the Alt key while I'm poly painting, it will paint the alternate color in there. Remember, if you have not yet watched the video on layers, you can erase out of your painting if you paint into a layer by using the Alt key. So we'll go ahead and paint some spots along here. I could change to the drag rectangle stroke, and I could use alpha 8, and I could make my focal shift much, much harder like that by turning that down, and we could draw out spots like this. And we can just very easily go in here and create these repeating kind of patterns. Now, if I press Morph UV again, it pops it back into 3D view, and that has been applied to the surface. If I want to carry on with this, I can turn on Morph UV one more time, and that'll flatten out the character. And then let's maybe turn down our RGB intensity. And let's change to a spray stroke. And we can spatter these dots down the forehead here. And let's change to a really contrasting color here. We'll change to a red, turn our draw size up, and then we'll spatter some of those red dots here through the chest. Maybe we'll go to B for brush, D for deco, and grab our deco curve drag brush. Make sure that we are on RGB and not Z add. And if I draw a curve here, I can then paint using this curve. There we go. Now, if your UVs happen to be symmetrical, you can use X symmetry in this view. So that is something to keep in mind. These UVs are not because we broke these islands out onto the side. But if you do watch our video on UVs, you can see how you can take ZBrush generated UV coordinates into Maya and edit them. So you can still make them symmetrical, or you could make them symmetrical just using UV Master inside of ZBrush. So we've painted these strokes on here. Let's do one more. Let's say this character has this kind of marking running down the side of the face here. There we go. And turn off Morph UV, and it'll bring us back into 3D view, and we'll see that those strokes are applied to the surface. There we go. Now, in addition to painting, we can use this for sculpture as well. So here I've got this superhero character. He's composed of a variety of subtools: the cowl, the head, the eyes, the pants. Let's select the shirt. I'm going to Alt-click on the shirt to select that subtool, and I'll solo, so that's the only one we see. I'll go to my subtool menu, and I'll turn off poly paint on the shirt for now, since we're just going to be sculpting. Now, let's say I want to create a seam that runs from the shoulder down to the wrist. It could be challenging to create a nice, clean seam that runs right down that edge, perfectly straight. But if we use Morph UV, we can do this in flat view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my color back on, and I'm just going to fill the color with RGB white. So we'll go to Color, Fill Object. And this is going to allow me to create two little guide points. So I'm going to go to my standard brush, dot stroke alpha 1, make sure RGB is turned on, and we'll grab red. Or if we want it to be a little inconspicuous, we'll just grab a little dark gray. Now I want the seam to start from, let's say, here. Let me turn my brush size up so it's a bit easier to make this mark. I want my seam to go from here to here. So I'll make two little guide points for myself. Then I will go down to Morph UV, press that button. So now it will morph that out flat. And here you see we have a guide right there for our seam. So I will go to the Damn Standard brush. I'll go to the stroke menu. I will go to Lazy Mouse, turn on Lazy Mouse, turn on Backtrack, turn on Line, turn on Snap to Track. Now there's no curvature here, but I always turn track curvature up because it's just a good habit to get into while using this. This allows me to confine my stroke to a straight line. And if you want to learn more about the stroke menu, we have an entire chapter that you can watch just on strokes and Lazy Mouse. So now if I click here and drag, it gives me a straight line. I'll end the straight line there at my other guide mark, and then I will backtrack back and forth along that edge. The reason it's called backtrack is because you can backtrack along that line. So here we can do the same on this side. Draw our line, and then backtrack. Now we'll turn off Morph UV, and here you can see we have a seam that runs exactly down the length of that arm. And it follows where that seam would actually be in the fabric. It's not going to meander or twist or turn. It's not going to have any sort of false starts or edges to it. It's going to go straight along the edge where that seam would actually lie. So if I were to try to do this in 3D view, you see it would be much, much more difficult to get the seam placed properly. However, if we go on the underside of the arm and make our two little guide points here, Morph UV, and then create our guideline, let's say right here. So we'll go from here to here. Oops, make sure that we are on Damn Standard brush. Go from here straight down to here, and then backtrack our seam. There we go. Go ahead and click Morph UV. And there you see, we get our seam on the underside as well. So it's a really nice thing to be able to do. It's also good for painting in decals or anything else where it would be beneficial to have a flat UV view, similar to what you might get painting in Mari or Substance Painter. But in ZBrush, you can not only paint, but sculpt in this view. So that is Morph UV. I hope you found this useful, and you can see ways that you can start to utilize this yourself as you paint and sculpt in ZBrush. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next chapter.